welcome everybody to this talk today. You're going to hear from a few of us today. I'm the CEO of the British Acupuncture Council, and also here today we have Fleur Claxon, who is the acupuncturist who's working on this really innovative project, and we also have Salma Ammar, who is the head of accreditation at the Professional Standards Authority. And there's a reason why all three of us are here today, because this project is not only an incredibly successful example of how accredited acupuncture can meet the demands of the healthcare needs of the UK currently, but it's also showing that this is an example that can be applied in other contexts in acupuncture, but also in the use of other bodies that are accredited in the same way and have the same kind of standards. Really, what we want to communicate is that there's been some big changes over the last 30 years or so. We know that we have these great challenges in UK healthcare. They're being actively discussed at the moment with development of the NHS long-term plan. And what you may not know is that there's been a huge amount of changes in acupuncture in the last 30, 35 years. There's been a real professionalization. There's been an accumulation of evidence. And the level of our standards and how we demonstrate those standards through regulation has really, really grown. And at the same time, there's developed a new form of regulation where there are bodies that voluntarily regulate themselves, and that standard of regulation is accredited by the Professional Standards Authority, which is why Oz is here today to explain that. And this has also expanded opportunities because the Professional Standards Authority accreditation is a badge of trust, which enables the members of those organizations to be able to be trusted to be placed in projects within the NHS, in private healthcare, and that can meet the needs of the UK public, and particularly the NHS workforce crisis. So without further ado, I'm going to hand on to Fleur first, who will talk about the project itself, and then I will talk about these changes that have happened in acupuncture, and then I'll hand on over to Oz, who will be talking about the wider potential for accredited registers.
Thank you. Morning. I got to say hello to some of you before I started to talk, so I know we've got some trainee GPs in the room, a couple of GPs, nutritionists, so welcome all. So as Alex said, I'm Fleur. I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a member of the British Acupuncture Council, and I'm an enthusiast about kind of inclusive health, integrated approaches to our health. So I'd like to take about 15 minutes just to share the story of an acupuncture service that's making a difference to the lives of some NHS patients in Gloucester. The service is an acupuncture clinic for people experiencing anxiety. It was commissioned by and it runs from an NHS primary care setting in inner city Gloucester, and it's been running each week for nearly 3 years. So in this time that I've got, I'm just going to touch upon what the service is, how and why it was commissioned, the practicalities of getting it started, and what some of the outcomes have been and some key takeaways. So we'll be down on the 3rd floor on the British Acupuncture Council stand at the end of the talk. So if you've got any questions, please come and find us. So, yeah, here you can see. So as I mentioned, this is an acupuncture service clinic, acupuncture clinic for anxiety. It takes place in a GP service. You can see our reception there, and it's delivered in a group setting. So you can see just the room set up there with me taking a picture in the background. We invite up to 8 people to each group. We use ear acupuncture, a protocol called NADA. It's very safe and it's effective. And it basically means that we can deliver this intervention without having to do kind of a full medical intake of each participant. And each group runs for 45 minutes, and a course of treatment is 6 weeks. So we run 2 groups on one weeknight evening, one at 6 p.m., then we have a 15-minute break, and one at 7 p.m. As it can be hard for highly anxious people to sit still and in silence for 45 minutes, in addition to the acupuncture, we've developed content for each week, which includes some sort of basic lifestyle education and a guided relaxation. I'll come back to the details of that in a bit. But first, I'd just like to wind back to why and when the service was commissioned. So, back in 2022, as the NHS faced significant staff shortages, particularly amongst clinicians, there was a government mandate requiring primary care networks, or PCNs, to provide more clinical appointments and to provide these in enhanced access hours, so either in the evening between 6 and 8 or on a Saturday between 9 and 5. And for anybody in the room who doesn't know what a PCN is, it's a primary care network is just a collection of GP practices. Yeah. So in response to this challenging situation, a decline in available clinical staff and a higher demand for appointments, one PCN in Gloucester took the innovative decision to explore inviting acupuncture practitioners to help deliver their clinical services. The clinical directors were looking for a cost-effective, non-pharmaceutical intervention to, go in tandem with the declining, hoping to decline the polypharmacy that the NHS is seeing. Anyway, they chose acupuncture because they felt it lay somewhere between physical and talking therapy. And importantly, they noted that they could turn to a PSA-accredited governing body, the British Acupuncture Council, which is the largest single governing body of acupuncturists in the UK, to help source safe and accountable practitioners. So the British Acupuncture Council responded to their inquiry, visiting the site of the PCN and discussing what clinics might be viable in the space they had available, and also what clinics might be appropriate to serve their patients' needs. So, just to contextualise who the Inner Gloucester PCN are, that's the building we work out of, by the way. So we're a primary care network that has over 35,000 patients across 4 GP services. It's a diverse patient population and it includes some of the most deprived areas in southwest England. So Gloucester is there. If your geography is like mine, it's quite useful to have a map. And a significant portion of the patient population over 40% have English as a second language, and there's over 81 different languages spoken within the network. The British Acupuncture Council assisted the PCN in recruiting acupuncturists. They advertised the available roles on their weekly member newsletter, and they were also present during the interviews. And 3 BAcC acupuncturists were hired, myself, a colleague Jenny Heckford, and a colleague Wendy Williams. And as soon as we knew we got the job, we immediately started meeting to discuss how to develop and deliver these clinics. In fact, we run 2 clinics, a pain clinic and the ear clinic, but we're talking about the ear today. We met regularly with the PCN manager to develop clinic paperwork, so ranging from consent forms, patient information forms, resource sheets, posters, leaflets to promote the service. And we developed call scripts for PCN staff. They knew nothing about acupuncture, but they were going to be the ones who were phoning the patients to talk about the service. We sourced measurement tools. We used the general anxiety disorder form on weeks 1 and 6 to measure outcomes. And we have a patient feedback form. You can see that there. And also we developed, as I mentioned, this content for each session, but I'll share the headlines of those in a moment. And then in the 3rd week of October 2022, we opened the doors. So I just want to talk you through the patient experience, what it looks like for the patient. A referral comes in, and the referral can either be a self-referral through reception or any clinical staff, so GPs, mental health staff, pharmacists, social prescribers. The acupuncturist can refer between pain and anxiety clinics. An admin person will pick up that referral and call the patient to check if they're still wanting to take part. And if they do, they're added to the next 6-week clinic. And then anywhere from 2 weeks before the clinic begins, the acupuncturist will call the participants for a brief pre-clinic chat. This is something we started to build in, and it's really important. We check that they've got all the information they need, but we ask them if they've got any concerns or queries, given that they're already highly anxious and they're going to maybe have acupuncture, somebody putting needles in their ears for the first time, and they're going to be with a group of people they've never met. It's turned out to be a key part of the service. So on the first night of the 6 sessions, participants are asked to arrive a little bit early. I'm in reception 10 to 15 minutes before the clinics begin to greet everybody, and we also have a delightful colleague called Lorraine who will give out their forms, but also offer them a warm drink and a snack. We do just everything we can to allow people to feel welcome and settle in. Then we take them into the room. So you can see here a kind of this is a really loose kind of headline of what we might do each week. You know, from introducing what we're going to do, NADA, to talking about anxiety through the lens of yin and yang. That's acupuncture language, but we explain that. We might talk about food and digestion and other things we have to digest in life, emotions and interactions, sleep, rest, the breath. We might talk about movement, exercise, nature, and we might introduce some very light kind of mindful self-compassion, and then we recap. This is a guide because every group is different, so we really just gauge, you know, where we're at. And I think for the acupuncturists, this has been the part that we have had to do, you know, some continued professional development on. You know, it's not our usual arena, and feel that we are confident and competent in delivering these topics. What does happen in every session and every group is that we start with the participants being given a sterilised wipe to clean their ears. The needles go in. We explain what will happen very slowly and very carefully. And the next 45 minutes, we emphasise that if at any point participants can let us know if they're uncomfortable, we can take their needles out, they can leave the room, go and have a cup of tea in reception. I have to say, in 3 years, that's happened only once with a gentleman who was recently bereaved. So, but we want to make it feel wide and open. And we also emphasise that they don't have to listen to anything we're saying. They can just sit and enjoy having the needles in. They can't do it wrong, and that these sessions are for them, so they should take what they need. So, another really important point, is integrating into the service. So, part of setting it up and continuing this service has been sharing what we do within the PCN. We've sought to foster understanding amongst fellow healthcare professionals of what acupuncture and this clinic are. The acupuncture team attends multidisciplinary team meetings, and we present the clinic and the outcomes to the GPs, social prescribers, mental health team. We've participated in some protected learning events, which is time for staff to do continued learning. And we've had staff from all departments within the practice, so admin, reception, backroom staff, have the opportunity to experience ear acupuncture and its benefits and gain insight to how the service operates. Last year, the PCN commissioned a long-term impact evaluation. That we spoke to a handful of patients who'd been out of the service for 6 months or more because they wanted to gain some information about long-term effects. And that was shared in protected learning meetings with GPs, the outcome of that. And all of this is done with an aim to drive harmonious integration within the NHS, to educate staff about what we're doing, and also to drive referrals to the service. I just have to share that at the last MDT I attended, which was about 6 weeks ago, the GP who was leading the meeting thanked our team for the service, and I quote, "making our lives and that of our patients a little bit easier." So you can see a couple of quotes here from patients. There's a bit of a typo in the top, but yeah, just to start to get a flavour of the sort of feedback we're getting. So one of the things, we've worked really hard to offer an inclusive, a safe and accessible service with little or no barriers to referral. As I mentioned, we accept referrals from any staff member in the PCN, and we are really proud of the inclusivity of the service. We've accommodated participants with English as a second language, which is obviously really important in our patient population, with learning disabilities, visual impairments, complex physical needs, and patients from excluded minorities such as migrant or the traveller community, which is, quite prevalent in Gloucester. So outcomes. As I mentioned, we use a general anxiety disorder form in week 1 and week 6. We've currently got feedback from over 250 patients, and you can see the average scores here, so that's not bad. And also we do a feedback form asking if participants would recommend this service to family and friends, which is a key performance indicator for the NHS, and on that we score 98.9%. So there's a few more quotes. So as you can see from the GAD scores that I just shared, the improvements in overall well-being of this non-pharmaceutical intervention have been quite impressive, with participants sleeping better, feeling better, working better, and living better. And for some participants, the effects have really been far-reaching, and we've witnessed people who have been unable to leave the house for years starting to go out, or people returning to work, or managing to curb their reliance on substances. It's been incredibly encouraging for us to see that. So cost and efficiency. This is an incredibly cost-effective, holistic mental health intervention that promotes wellness and provides alternative patient choice. You can see here costings per person. It's actually the wrong way round. But so we invite 8 people. Some people may not turn up on the first night. We may get dropouts in week 1 or 2. Usually by week 3, the groups become pretty cohesive. So we invite 8 to allow for some dropout. But for example, I'm in week 3 of a course at the moment, and I've got 6 in one group and 7 in the other. But yeah, so if you transpose those, if there's 6 people, it's £13.75 a session, and if there's 4 people, it's £18.98 a session. So. So the benefits of the service have exceeded our expectations and the PCN's expectations, frankly, and have resulted in interest from other primary care networks. So in collaboration with Gloucester Inner City PCN, with us, the practitioners, with staff from the British Acupuncture Council, we developed a toolkit to support other NHS primary care services in setting up a similar service. And it's a document that details step-by-step overview of the service journey from inception to setup and implementation. And it represents best practice. And we hope that it will be a valuable resource for other PCNs and healthcare settings to look at setting up a similar service. So, just to finish on some key takeaways, Mind commissioned a report called the Big Mental Health Report that was published last year in 2024. And in it states that about 4.5 million people in England experience anxiety. About 3.8 million experience depression, which we find is a common comorbidity in the anxiety clinic. So combined, that's sort of, we're talking around 10% of the population. Last year, the service was entered by the PCN for a parliamentary award, and it remains the most successful in terms of attendance and outcomes group intervention within the primary care network and actually throughout Gloucester. So I'm hoping that this is a very whistle-stop tour of how this model could demonstrate a safe, effective and accessible acupuncture intervention, and this may be able to be scaled across regions, offering hope for more patients and showcasing how integrated care can work. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Fleur. So I just want to add some important context, because there's a question, well, how can we learn from this success? And there's a big question of, we have this huge challenge at the moment in UK. Many of you will be familiar with the Darzi report, independent investigation to the NHS England. April 2024, 1 million people waiting for mental health services, 345,000 referrals, or people were waiting over a year. Great costs of mental health in the UK compared to the budget. So the question is how did this project get off the ground? And there's an even more interesting question is, the primary care network came to the British Acupuncture Council, not the other way around. And why did that happen? And I think this is an important thing to understand. So what I and Oz are going to talk about, we're going to talk about the changes in acupuncture and the changes in regulation that made it happen. And regulation might not be the most interesting thing for the everyday person, but it's what makes this happen. You saw those quotes. They're the important things, the outcomes that this actually can enable. So a lot has changed in acupuncture, and I'm going to briefly talk about the fact that we have degree-level training across our entire membership as a minimum standard for admission. So it's a highly professional training now in acupuncture. We have the regulation, the very high-quality regulation that we'll talk about, and it's enabled us to be a trusted profession, which means that we are now part of that institutional structure and framework across the UK. And as we really feel that the priorities in healthcare are evolving towards us, not the other way around, towards the traditional insight that comes from Chinese medicine. And this is something I want to highlight too. So just to start off, in 2004, there was a landmark study, safety study about acupuncture. 6,348 patients completed these questionnaires that constitute about 30,000 consultations. And they only used British Acupuncture Council members because of our standards. To pass the ethics for the research, they had to use practitioners who upheld these standards, and there's only one organisation that does that. And the conclusion was this: acupuncture is relatively safe when practiced by regulated practitioners, and that's us. And it's relatively not relatively as in, oh, it's quite safe. It's relatively as in, relative to other kinds of interventions. So it does actually mean it's very safe, but it says relatively. And so our community represents 35 years of holding this degree-level training standard, 3,600 hours, 400 hours of clinical practice. We do biomedical sciences, physiology, pathology. We do critical evaluation of research, extensive patient care, therapeutic relationship, of course, rigorous and safety and hygiene training. And we also recognize our limits to work within conventional medicine, and that means that we are responsible practitioners. We refer when we realize that when we see red flags that we're not capable of treating. This is a very mature profession now. It's very different, I think, what the public perception might be of what acupuncture is. We are first-class healthcare practitioners. And we're the gold standard in Europe, one of the primary members of the European Traditional Chinese Medicine Association. And many other European countries tell us that they're envious of what we've achieved here in terms of our education and our regulation and our status. We have extensive standards and codes, and we have this great regulation. So we have our own regulation, very, very high standards, and now we have this extra layer of independent accreditation. I'm pleased to say we've just been told we passed our accreditation for this year, and it's a lot of work that we do. The PSA really hold us to account. That means that we are able to have trust. And all of these organizations are happy to associate themselves with us because of the trust that we have. There's a direct link through from the NHS website, through the PSA website, to our practitioner directory. All of these patient advocacy charities, they all have links back to our website. That trust enables us to have these kind of projects to run. Final point I'd like to make just before I hand over to Oz is that you'll see a lot of watchwords come out in the NHS long-term plan and Darzi's independent investigation: prevention, empowerment, supporting lifestyle change, self-help. Well, Chinese medicine's been there a long time, a couple of thousand years. And this is why we really think that the world is catching up with the views that come out of this medicine. We call it traditional, but it doesn't mean that it's not advanced. It's the medicine, advanced medicine of a very advanced civilization. We know that long list of inventions that came from China and East Asia. This is part of that scientific and technical tradition. And we really feel we have an enormous amount to offer. And that's affirmed by the fact that, as I say, conventional medicine's catching up. Traditional acupuncture is recommended for the treatment of chronic primary pain in the current NICE guidelines. Huge potential, and we want to unlock that potential. So again, as Claire Fleur says, we'll be on the stand today. Please do contact me if you have any interest in these projects or would like to investigate running a project or access one of these projects in the future. We're ready to work. 2,300 full members, 30 years. We have this toolkit ready to go. So with that, I will hand over to us.
Good morning, everybody. I am just going to finish up by claiming credit for all of the great work that has happened in this space, in spite of actually not doing very much to achieve anything that has been achieved. I am Oz, and I'm the head of accreditation at the Professional Standards Authority, which is an organisation you are very unlikely to have heard of. And we have the job of overseeing the professional statutory regulators. So for any of you who are GPs or training in order to become a doctor, to become a nurse, we are the regulator for those groups, or rather those are there are regulators for those groups, and we oversee their performance. But we then also have this special power that we were granted in 2014 to accredit voluntary registers. And I'll tell you a bit more about what we do in that space. But the reason why I'm here today to talk to you is about the example, I think, that we've talked about today, about how accreditation and about how the role of the voluntary registers and the accreditation that's given to them can help support the challenges that we're facing in the delivery of health and social care across the whole of the UK, which is growing services in new and innovative ways to meet demands that we are going to increasingly be facing. So the Accredited Registers Programme, established in 2014 and is set out in our governing legislation, gives us the ability to accredit voluntary registers, and we have now accredited 29 registers across the UK. We use a set of standards that are called the Standards for Accredited Registers. They do what is said on the tin, and we award our quality mark, which you'll see at the end of these slides, to the registers that achieve our accredited status, and then that quality mark is then usable by everybody who is on that register. And that quality mark is a badge so that members of the public are able to tell that this individual has met the standards that are required for safe and effective practice. So for anybody in this room who is using the services of anyone on our accredited registers, we're encouraging you to look for that quality mark. But particularly if anybody in this room is involved with recruiting people to undertake services or in the commissioning of services, then understanding that the accredited registers and looking for that quality mark is a really important way of determining the safety and quality of service. And the way that you can be assured is the fact that the Professional Standards Authority is looking at organisations like BAcC and testing their systems to be able to determine that they're able to do things that are really important for the regulation of professionals. Things like setting high standards for both professional conduct, for the way in which education and training is delivered, and then that there are steps being taken to quality assure that training, to make sure that people have the right skills, the right values, the right behaviours, to be working in these really important roles where harm could occur to members of the public if people don't have the right skills. Less importantly in terms of the volume, but really important for the trust that it imbues, is we're also making sure that bodies like BAcC can fairly process complaints that might arise and that might result in action that needs to be taken to enhance public protection. The way in which we do this is very similar to the way in which we oversee the work of the statutory regulators as well. The standards are almost identical, and we're actually finishing up a consultation to determine whether or not they should be even more similar, so that we can provide the same or similar levels of assurance about the skills and capabilities of people on registers. So just to very briefly finish up, what accreditation can do and I think that is demonstrated in this example, is it can provide the part of the confidence to commission services, particularly new and innovative services. And as we're dealing with more devolved commissioning decisions being made, I think it's really important that confidence can be given. But it can also help people respond to patient demand, because there is an untapped workforce that's out there where there are assurances that can be gathered. So when those pressures are high, you can look for the quality mark to be able to determine, and look for accredited register status to be able to look for that, for the confidence and assurance that you need. And you can do that across 130,000 practitioners across all of those different spaces to practice. So that's the mark. And if you're looking for services, or you are looking to commission services, look for that, and you'll know that you can gain that confidence.
Thank you very much.
So just to finish, this is what it's all about. I was just talking to Oz, and he was saying there's a real service mentality in his background, in our backgrounds, in everyone who's in the British Acupuncture Council. We're in this for this. And so while we have to talk about accreditation, regulation, and public trust and safety and all these issues, this is the outcome. So if this inspires you or leads you to have any questions, as I say, please do come and talk to us or email or contact us. Thank you very much.